Welcome to the Journey to Joy podcast. I am excited to have some good friends of mine here, Eric and Emily Orton. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I met. First, I met Eric, then I got to meet Emily. So fun. So I met Eric, gosh, it's probably been 4 years ago. I'm just roundabout guessing. I think it's been about 4 years, actually. Three or
Yeah,
four.
three and a half, something like
Three and a
that.
half. Yeah, it's been a little while. And I met Eric in a mastermind. And I remember like the second that I heard Eric, he was talking about as an entrepreneur, his product that he had, and it was taking families sailing. That's like the first thing that like sparked my interest. Now he had a book that he wrote and he had all this experience and we can get to that and we'll pin all that in the show notes. And he was talking about, I take families or business groups sailing, and they get to have this sailing experience, which was born out of, he took his family sailing for a year. They lived on a sailboat for an entire year. And he wrote a book about that called Seven at Sea. And he and Emily did that.
Also, we wrote the book because we're
I was going to
definitely
say Eric and
Yeah,
Emily wrote the book Seven at Sea, and they co-authored the experience as well with their
for
family.
sure.
And so as Eric was describing that, I was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to take my family sailing. That sounds fun. Okay, like let's do this. Never been sailing, I don't think I'd used my passport ever at that point. I don't know if I even had a passport. And it was a leap for me. And then of course I come home from that mastermind. I'd approached Eric, kind of talked about it. I went home and told my family, like, this is what I want to do. And my kids were like, what? And I was like, yes, it's going to be so much fun. And Eric's so much fun. And we get to meet Emily and like, it's going to be so awesome. And they were like, Mom, you are off your rocker. I was like, no, we're going to do this thing. And we did. And we went to the British Virgin Islands and it was so amazing. And it was one of my kids' favorite experiences as a vacation. We were captive audience to each other on the sailboat for 5 days. And no one tried to kill each other, which was awesome because I still had some teenagers at the time. It was a really great bonding experience for us, but it also was an opportunity for me to allow them to be them and just do whatever they wanted. And so it was really awesome. And at that time I got to meet Emily and we got to spend the week and do some personal development on the boat as well, which my kids were like, what is this personal development stuff? Which I've been doing, but I hadn't learned how to introduce it to my kids so much. Anyway, so it was amazing. It was amazing. So that's how I met Eric and Emily. And they since have become amazing friends of mine and have come and spoken at my conference. And we love to keep tabs on what's going on in each other's entrepreneurial journeys. And they're just an amazing support and example to me of an amazing partnership, relationship, which is so cool. So I'm going to pass it to you guys for a minute, and I want you to introduce yourself from your perspective.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. It is really fun to be here with you. And that was a great trip. That was a really great trip. And there's things that I have taken that I remember from that as well. That was super special for me. Our family, as you mentioned, we lived on a sailboat for a year. That was in 2014. And we have 5 children. At the time, they were ages 6 to 16. Now they are ages almost 18 to 28. So we have, from when we had that experience first and wrote the book about it, we have shifted quite a bit. We're now, we have 2 kids married, 1 almost engaged. We only have 1 at home now, and we have 2 grandchildren. So
Wow.
we've been through a bit on the home front. We've moved from New York to San Diego to Salt Lake City. That's been a shift in our recent times as well. And also we have in that, and we've been taking people sailing for a long time, but as a business and with our framework, our coaching framework as well, we have that just started at the end of 2020. So we feel like we're in our entrepreneurial journey, kind of like where we have some idea what we're doing, but still new.
We're toddlers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, and we're coming up on 30 years of marriage. I don't think longevity always, deserves the applause because we want to be going for quality there. But I think we're pretty resilient and we work through a lot of tough things, and I'm proud of us. I think it's been a good 30. High five.
Yes. It in a very by the way, when you say you work through things, I would watch you. It was really neat to watch you on the boat. I think the first thing that had happened was they didn't deliver the groceries they were supposed to, and I think some of the power wasn't working on the boat either. And it was the power piece. Neither of you showed any like frustration. It didn't elevate you. You were like, okay. And then the guy comes up and you're like, thanks for your help. And I was like, what just happened? Because there was zero like frustration, and whether you had some internally, I don't know, but you externally, the way that you showed up and the way that you behaved and presented yourself was like, well, okay, well, I guess we'll figure it out, right? And we'll get some power and it'll be fine. And really, I mean, I remember that was actually really key because I was like, man, I get frustrated. I mean, not that I'm like a super elevated person, but still your level of calm, there wasn't bickering between the two of you. Like there wasn't arguing. And I was watching that because I didn't have that example of in my parents in relationship. And so one of the things that I actually do watch, I know, don't be creeped out, but I do, watch the way that you would communicate with each other. And it was a really good, healthy example of how to have positive communication in relationships. So I'm sure you're modeling that very well for your children as well. So,
Oh, thank you so much. I feel like that's something that's been so intentional and so deliberate, partly because we work together. And after the book came out, we started doing interviews, and we also started doing some public speaking. And it's so much easier when you're by yourself and you can be extemporaneous and draw in this story and know you're going to circle back or whatever. But when you are with a partner and you have said, I'm going to tell this story, you're going to tell that story, or a question is asked and you're like, what do we do? And it was quite frustrating, actually. And I think more so for Eric because I was more thoughtless in those situations. I would just think, I have an idea, so I better say it, instead of, working as a partner. And he had a lot more on stage time. And so he knew about how everybody takes their turn. Anyway, we actually had to sit down and talk about like, this is really frustrating. How are we going to give each other little cues that won't make anybody else feel uncomfortable, but that we're going to be able to, in a peaceful way, pass the baton back and forth, and share that.
which you did beautifully. By the way, sorry.
Thank you.
And I'm jumping ahead here, but I'll just say by the time we spoke at your conference in Boise, what was it, a year and a half ago?
Mm-hmm.
We had learned a lot as a couple about how to communicate, especially on stage, because you go to a dinner party and you're sitting around and somebody's telling a story and somebody jumps in to kind of like with the punchline or to kind of add their details, and it's no big deal. People can still get frustrated, but then you're in front of an audience, at your conference, and we've been in front of audiences up to, I would say, 5,000 people, and that adds another level of pressure that can really make it hard to enjoy doing something like that together. And I'm happy to say that we have relaxed a lot, and we've learned to communicate better and to trust each other more. And we can circle back to that if you want, but I just want to say that I think by the time we were speaking at your conference, we'd come a long, long way.
Well, and it showed. It was like beautiful waves. Like it was like butter. When you watched, I could watch because because I was learning to speak, right? And it was my second conference. And so I'd been learning to speak on stage. And so I would analyze. That's what I do. And I would watch you guys and I was like, wow. And I could see what you were doing and I could see how fluid it was, and how well you just went back and forth, and like, and the rest of the audience probably just had the experience of listening to you speak. But I was watching like the magic of the process of how you were doing that. And I could tell, like, yes, there was so much thought and practice put into, and communication put into what you were doing. And so I think that's it's so, there's so many little lessons just inside that, which is how intentional you were about having to sit down and have the conversations and talk about what it's going to look like and what works for you. And, you know, when Emily's like, I just like to say all the things, that would be me too. I just like to say all the things. But then Eric probably had a great level of patience and like not getting so frustrated when like you're learning. And anyway, so I love all those pieces, and people need to realize there's pieces. Like, it's not smooth and you're not passing the baton like, you know, like you've been doing it your whole life. It takes work and it takes intention in order to get to a level that you are presenting at now. And yeah.
I just think that anytime any of us watches somebody do something really well and it looks effortless, that's our cue to realize that this person has put in the effort.
Yes.
You know, whether we're at the Olympics and we're watching somebody figure skate beautifully, I know you've kind of mentioned that before, Emily, or, you know, or we're watching somebody speak on stage, or, you know, with my background in the theater, when you see a performance unfold smoothly, the goal is for the audience never to see the stitching on the backside, so to speak,
Yes.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
but it's there. It's always there. And so, you know, when you watch professional athletes do what they do and it looks effortless, that's our cue to realize that they've put in the work to make it look easy, to be honest.
Yes. They put in the effort. I love that. Yeah.
I think it's really important. I know just this morning we were looking at our ads and our call rate and our show up rate for clients, you know, prospective clients. And we're like, okay, we're going to get into the nitty gritty, you know, where are things shifting and how can we, you know, boost this and get a higher show up rate and stuff like that. And for me, it's equally important to, like you said, analyze the communication dynamics. And even if we were not partners in business, whatever your home life is affects your business so much. So I think it would still be worth this level of intentional analytics to go in and just like a pro sports team might rerun plays that didn't work and plays that did work the same, going through and saying like, where did we fumble? What would we do differently next time? Okay, let's run that play again. I think it is really important, just as important as figuring out our analytics, you know, for our funnel or whatever it might be in our business, to figuring that out in our family. And I think you're right to say that there are pieces. You might say like, oh, I wish somebody would like talk to me that way. Well, there was a time when, and still now, obviously always more work to do, but there would be a time when maybe you would think, oh, I wish Emily would talk to me this way or not talk to me that way. And now we're at that place because you said, this is really frustrating to me. This is how I feel when you interrupt or whatever. I'm a great interrupter. I came from a family of interrupters. And so for us to go back and, you know, he has been very patient, as you've said, that he'll say, it's happening again, you know? And I'm like, okay, let me try. Let me see where I went. Like, what can I do? And vice versa. And I don't want to, you know, I only want to say expose my own flaws myself.
But you can talk about my flaws.
Anyway, it's that's something that is never off the menu. That conversation is always on the menu. It's like, that didn't feel good. That didn't work for me. How could we, you know, rework that next time? And it does get smoother and smoother. And, you know, just like the conversation we were having earlier about our show up rate, I'm like, I'm eager to get into that because I know we're going to learn, and then we're going to try something and we're going to collect some new data and keep moving forward.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So I want to point something out, and I hope you're okay with me doing this, but I gave you an out this morning which is very interesting. So I must have unintentionally, but intentionally for this purpose, done it, and you didn't take it. So here's what's interesting. When we first, so before we hit record here, Eric and Emily both had told me like, yeah, it was a down morning. Like this was not like, yeah, we're on top of the world morning. It was a down morning. And I don't know why, or if you even want to share that or what that means. But what I think is important to talk about is it was a down morning. I sent you a text message, and I also had a down morning, but I already showed up for one call. I'm already dressed, makeup, hair, whatever. Like I'm good to go.
Same.
Right? But I sent you a text message and I was like, how are you doing today? Are you still good for our call? It was an hour before our call. Are you still good? And if not, I'm flexible if you need to reschedule. And you're like, nope, we're good to go. And then when we got on the call and you're like, yeah, it's been a down morning. And I was like, I gave you the opportunity, not that I knew, but I gave you the opportunity to be like, yeah, it's been a crappy day and we don't want to. And so we're going to just do it a different day. But you didn't take it. What had you not take that?
Well, we just love hanging out with you, Lisa. That's a
I am
big part
fun.
of it.
Okay, so I'm fun, yeah.
For sure. For sure.
That's definitely part of it.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, you're in our friend group, and you're somebody that we admire as well. And, you know, we value our time with you. And
we always like talking to you.
And so all that is
Love talking to you
true.
too.
And then also, you know, as we've kind of developed our business, we also have just said Monday is our podcast day. That's the day we do podcasting. And so, you know, next Monday I'm on a sailing trip in the Bahamas, and so I'm not available. And after that, it gets close to Christmas and you know, and on. And so it's like if we kick it down the road, we're kicking it way down the road, and we don't want to miss this chance to talk with you. And so and I'm happy to get into why today was sort of a down day. But the stuff that is making it kind of a you know, the day that it is all very temporary. We're going to push through it. We're going to figure it out. It's going to be fine. And it's no fun in the middle of it, but you can't let that stop you. You can't let those day-to-day speed bumps bring you to a stop. And so, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, that we would even take the out. And so I'm glad that we're here. I have a feeling that I'll probably feel better at the end of this conversation than I did at the beginning. And so I'm in it for selfish reasons.
That's good. Okay, well, I love number one that you didn't even think about taking me out. Like it didn't even cross your mind, which I think is part of your conditioning. It's part of that effort when you talked about when something looks effortless. I like how you described it, and I've never thought of it that way, but they put in all the effort on the back end. You just didn't get to see all that. And that's probably because what you've done is you've put in all the effort, and you've got the consistency, and you've got, you know, the mindset, and it's training. And so then when you do have the down days, it wasn't even a question that you would take the out. Like you didn't even recognize it. I recognized I was giving it to you, but it's interesting. You didn't even recognize that I gave it to you. So that's all that effort that you've put in. So, I mean, like props, but also what a great example of what happens when you are committed and consistent. Then when we talk about what's going to derail us or how we don't make progress to our goals, it's because we take the out. But we haven't conditioned ourselves yet. And I'm guilty as charged, by the way. There's some things I hadn't conditioned myself to not take the out. So, because I gave you the out.
I thought it could be a win. You know,
Yeah.
I thought there are some things that we don't yet understand why they're happening and where we might be able to have some influence. There are some things that we don't have control over. This is one where we could say, yes, we will be there. We will show up. This thing we agreed to is going to happen, and we're going to feel like
Control
we did
the
it.
controllables.
Yeah, we did something that we said we would do, and I was like, this could be a win in our day. And so for me, that felt good.
Yeah, I mean, you were sharing something with me recently, Emily. There's a book that we love called Steal Like an Artist, and he has a follow-up book. What's it called?
Keep going.
It's called Keep Going. And do you remember his name?
It's
There-
something
these-
it's something Cleon. His last name is Kleon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you want to look it up while I'm telling this or something. But
Okay.
he writes these kind of like picture drawing books with a little bit of text and just but really good ideas. And his first book was called Steal Like an Artist, and I have a copy. We've given it to our kids. I love giving it as a gift book. And it's just that book. The idea is that we're all deriving stuff from each other. You know, Mozart stole from Bach,
Yeah.
Beethoven stole from Mozart, composers, artists steal from the artists that come before them. Thought leaders take ideas from other thought leaders, and writers take ideas from, we all learn from each other, but then we all put our personal spin on it. So that's the first book. And the other one, his name is Austin Kleon. And so this one is called Keep Going. And Emily was just reading a snippet to me the other day. And the idea, he was like, this is what an artist does. An artist shows up every day and does their work. And some days they're going to get rejection letters. And most of the days they're going to get rejection letters. Every once in a while they'll win an award, or they'll sell something, they'll get published, or, they'll get funded, and something nice and encouraging happens. Most days are not going to be that. Most days, nobody's going to care. Nobody's watching. Nobody's checking in on you. Nobody's giving you approval or validation or even encouragement. And the artist just keeps showing up every day doing its work. If you're a painter, you paint every day. If you're a writer, you write every day. In our case, if we're podcasters, if you're a podcaster, we podcast every week. It's what we do. Whether it's a good day or a bad day, we show up. And here, I think, is maybe a more concrete example that most of us can relate to. Emily and I walk every day, except Sundays. We sleep in or we take it easy on Sundays, but we walk 6 days a week, I'll say. We get up and we've just come up with the mantra, there's no such thing as bad weather. We woke up today and winter has finally arrived. We're in Salt Lake City, so it's in the Rocky Mountains. And I look at my phone for the weather and it's 27 degrees. It's different than where you are in Hawaii, but I know you've lived through plenty of cold weather.
Yes.
But I don't even think about it. We get up and I'm just like, well, it sounds like it's a 2 layer of sweatpants kind of day. And I know that I'm going to wear an extra sweater under my jacket because it's cold.
And sometimes it's like a ski goggles day if it's snowing and we're going to be out there walking.
Yeah, and some days it's already going to be hot before the sun comes up. But we just walk every day. And as we were like, I don't think Emily and I had even said a word to each other. We're both dressed and we're walking out the door, and it's the sky is barely light, is the day is, it's just the sky is very barely lighting.
We might have been 3 or 4 blocks on.
And then but then it's like, as we're walking up the first hill, it's kind of like,
How'd you sleep?
yeah, how'd you sleep? And I guess the point of that is that we're huge believers in the power of routine, huge believers. And so, I mean, this may not be what you want to talk about the whole time, but just that we have these routines that help carry us whether we're in the mood or not. And that's how you get consistent, I guess.
I think Eric's been way better at that than me. I don't know if I just allow my emotions to be bigger, but sometimes I feel like my emotion does hijack my day. And I've actually done some training recently with the acceptance and commitment therapy, a lot of great books and videos by Russ Harris, who wrote The Happiness Trap. And I guess basically I'm just learning to unhook from some of those thoughts and say, thank you, brain. I'm noticing that you served up this thought today. I noticed that it's there. I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to try to figure out where it came from. I'm just like, there it is. And then look, what are my values though? Like, how do I want to show up today? And just not letting my feelings be the boss of me, and saying like, yeah, I feel sad, or I feel angry, or I feel frustrated, or I feel really excited about something that could really distract me from what I'm meant to do today. And I'm not a pro at this because I definitely do get distracted. It's like, oh, my grandbaby stopped by and announced, well, that's my new plan, you know.
Yeah. I don't need to work
But
now. This is great. Yeah.
but a lot of things now, a lot of times now, I'm getting better at being able to just acknowledge that it's there, but this is who I am, and move forward. And the way Seth Godin talks about it, he's a big marketing expert for your listeners. He has a lot of great books on marketing, and it talks about building that culture, and it is that basically people like us do things like this. And I think that's how it is with the walk or the podcast or we had a tense interaction, so we'll definitely be analyzing that later, you know, like we just will.
Okay. I love that. I do think it would be useful to our listeners to talk about some of the routines. And I think, I'm going to say I had found routine, so boring, like so boring. And so one of the things I've had to break is that routines are actually very rewarding, but what was rewarding before was like, go left, go right, go up, go down. Like, what are we doing today? Right. Or what do I feel like doing today? And so my reward system was hijacked with routines being like feeling trapped. And I'm sure some of the listeners, you know, feel like that too, where a routine means I have less choice. And so that I don't get to do what I want because I'm stuck in a routine. I think that like the word routine sounds just like a 4-letter word to me, and did for a long time. And I had my coach this morning, actually, she sent me a message and she asked me like pretty much, how are you doing with your routines? Because I've been practicing for 3 months now. I've been alone in Hawaii. Okay. And when I say alone, I have not made friends intentionally. You know, I go to church, I come home, I go get a massage, I go for my walks, like, but I literally don't have friends here. I have friends all around the world on the phone, you know, but not here. Well, this next month and a half, I have consistent people coming to stay with me, consistent friends or my children coming to stay with me. And so it's been so interesting to watch myself. I have a friend here that's from Norway, and she came and she's here for 9 days. And by the way, I know her from a mastermind. We've never like had a sleepover where we hang out together like, you know, teenagers before. And so now we're in my little 1-bedroom, you know, she's in the living room, I'm in my bedroom, and we're hanging out for 9 days. And I'm watching myself in real time. Am I going to stay committed to my routines, or am I going to choose to abandon my routines like I used to? And I watched myself have to ask myself the question of what am I going to choose to do? And I thought, no, this is actually, I like my routines. And I think that's the first time ever in my whole life I would ever have said that word, that I like routines. But the routines are feeding me more than the sporadic dopamine hits of not having routine are feeding me. And it took me some time and some effort on the back end to create that, to where it actually is important to me, but I now know why for myself. And so then that can start to carry over as a new habit into the rest of my life and my work life, and, you know, the more things that I want to accomplish. And I think that, you know, habit hijacking is not, it's like a temporary fix. It's not deep enough, I don't think, because like what you're doing, Emily, like you're going on a deeper level so that you can really understand and listen and see what your brain's doing so that you can redirect it, or you can see what it's trying to feed you, or maybe what it is that you're needing, and so why you're making the choice you are. I think that really starts to make lasting change so that we don't have to keep coming back to revisit it. Now I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have people here for a month and a half, and I'm going to stay on my routine. I'm going to go to my gym. I'm going to go for my walks every day. I'm going to get my hiking in. I went to the temple. I do all the things I do in a week, and my podcast, and she can be in the other room working, and I don't feel guilty, and it feels amazing. And it's so good. So what kind of routines, I guess, have you built, Eric? Because Because it sounds like you like love, some people love routines, some people do not. Some of us are resistant and have to learn them.
Well, I'll just put it in some context. We teach a framework that we learned living on a sailboat, and you've heard us talk about this, and I'm going to call it the autopilot. And a lot of times when we get people out on a boat with us, they're surprised that we don't stand at the wheel and steer the boat the whole time the boat is moving. We will push a button that is the autopilot, and that will keep the boat going on a specific course for as long as we leave it there, no matter what else happens.
Yes.
And we learn this when we live on a sailboat, because unless you've actually sailed long distances, it's fun. It's very Instagrammy to have a picture where you're holding the wheel and the wind is in your hair and you kind of wear a sailory outfit and it looks good. Yeah. But after about 15, 20 minutes max, it gets really boring to just stand there and hold the wheel the whole time. And so we used the autopilot constantly. And still, I would say that 95% of the time when I'm out on a sailboat, I'm on autopilot. The only time I take it off autopilot is when I'm coming into a marina or we're going to dock the boat or anchor the boat in some way. But the vast majority of the time, I've chosen a direction and I hit a button and the boat will sail that direction. And I'll only change if there's an obstacle, like some other boat is in the way, or we need to get to a point where we had to go around this rock and now we're going to change our course to get us where we want to keep going. Autopilot for us is sort of our metaphor for what a routine is. It's the thing that you can do that is going to give you the highest chance of getting where you want to go. And it's important that you are the one that's choosing where you want to go. And the autopilot then serves you in getting there. And the other thing is that if you can get good at it, it actually, like I said, reduces the amount of energy that it takes you to do that thing, which then frees up your energy and your time and your attention to do some of these other things that you are interested in, that if it was always a demand on your attention to make certain things happen, then you actually have lower bandwidth to explore and discover other things.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I remember when you taught me that, by the way. So you give us an opportunity to get up and teach us to sail, right? And I when you just said that, I totally remember that you took it off autopilot. Okay. So the autopilot has this like straight line on the GPS, right? So you can see it on the screen. There's this beautiful straight line on the GPS from point A to point B. And I was like, awesome. And then you took it off and I was like, left, right. It was so much harder to steer than I could have ever imagined. And my line was very squiggly. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a squiggly line. And I didn't think it would be that hard, but as the waves would come, like it would kind of toss me. It would be, and it took a lot of energy to keep the boat going straight. And it still wasn't straight, but the autopilot was straight. So I love that you brought that up, because for those that haven't sailed, that squiggly line and trying to hold on to that wheel and keep it going straight when you get hit with all the different things was like, you cannot keep a straight line if you are not on autopilot. You literally can't. And so you're removing the resistance. But when we are trying to react, we don't have the routine, then we are getting tossed to and fro, really. And it takes up so much time and energy, and there's so much resistance. So you don't get as far ahead. When you look at people who are really, really productive or have achieved, people are like, Lisa, how do you get so far so fast in a week? Like they could talk to me a week later and I've got like all this stuff or all these changes I've made, or emotionally, a lot of the emotional processing that I do. And they're like, how are you doing that? I'm like, because you remove the resistance and then you can get into flow. And then once you get into flow, once you're on autopilot, that's your flow. You don't spend all your time debating anymore. You like know where you're going, why you're going there. And you also are more decisive. Is there a rock? We're going to decide. We're going to move around the rock. Do we need to go to a different spot? Great. We're going to just change and go to a different spot. We don't have a 30-minute or a half a day conversation about whether or not that change needs to happen. We're going to hit the rock. Let's make a different decision. And then we're going to adjust. So it becomes so much more automatic and decisive and clear. I think when you can perform in that way.
I've heard that you can be more flexible when you have a plan. And I think that the rhythms that we've built into our day really help with that because we say, oh, we do this, we do that. And if we're now going to make an adjustment, like we're going to be in a new location, this is why we love walking, because that's one you can do anywhere you go. So we always hit that mark, but it's easier to make adjustments. I found for me, I get that I have been, I didn't do well with a schedule. I did much better with a rhythm. Like these things are going to happen in this order, but I might kick off at a different time each day, or especially as I was homeschooling our 5 kids for 17 years, things weren't always like 8, 10 a.m. Yeah, punctuality was not my thing, but I would do things in the same sequence every time. Most of the time. I also practiced this once with rhythms. I remember Eric saying, you're interested in so many different things. I'm not sure what matters most to you and where I should invest, my support. And I thought about that. And I remember for 2 straight weeks, I just did every single thing that was related to my values and moving me forward in some like goal specific area of my life. And the first week I felt amazing. By the end of the second week, I did start feeling trapped. And I realized for me, it's actually important to make time for exploring, where I don't have to account that I went down this rabbit hole and I was learning about something else and it led to this other thing. And I needed to build in and set aside time to be able to explore and consider things that aren't related to my end goals or my outcomes, because I'm just, as a person, I just like learning and I'm fascinated to hear how things connect. And I may never want to go into architecture, but I still want to be able to read about it if I want to, or feeling connected. And so I realized most of the time the rhythm is good, but I need to have built into my rhythm these opportunities for absolute exploration that don't have to be related to anything else. And I think for you, there's something similar where you like to say, I have all these rhythms, I have all these routines. They're really good to help us get started on the day, to help us wrap up the day. But you're like, I need to go to a new place. I need to try a new activity. We got to have the variety, but we just have, and sometimes we even plan in, this is agenda-free time. Like this time period is blocked out. We know who we're going to be with. We have no idea what we'll be doing because we've set no agenda on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess a couple of other examples of this, because, sailing a boat can feel fairly abstract to most people in autopilot, unless you've been there, which is why we take people out sailing and why we like to coach using sailing metaphors, and those two dovetail together nicely. But some practical ones are, we talked about walking, and, we all know, and some of us maybe love Steve Jobs. Some of us may hate him, but Steve Jobs had an autopilot. He wore a black turtleneck and jeans every day because he didn't want to have to pick out an outfit. I know that feeling at the beginning of the day when it's like, oh, what do I want to wear today? You have to think through, like, what are my activities? What are the, what meetings am I going to be with? Who am I going to be? What's the weather? And you have to sort of, you stand there and you take a while to figure out what you're going to wear. One of the things that I've gone to is 90% of my wardrobe is blue. It's all blue. I'm wearing a blue long sleeve shirt today. I have one wild card. I have a pair of like maroon pants on. That's my one wild card. But like, it's like, I can just pull out anything, any pair of pants, any shirt, and it's going to go together. I don't have to think about it. And so that's one way of saying, like, I don't want to spend time thinking about what I'm going to wear because I don't really care that much about how I look. Yes, I want to be dressed appropriately for the weather, for the occasion. I want to be respectful of whoever I'm with, whatever event I'm at. But I don't want to be trying to create an outfit every day.
Whereas we have a daughter who loves to pour her creative energy into that endeavor. And so that's just not where you want to spend your energy.
So, that's why I chose that autopilot for me, and she's going to choose a different autopilot for her so that she can have the bandwidth to play around with different outfits and configurations. Because I
Yes.
have lots of other places where I want to bounce and tangent and do all kinds of other things that are unpredictable. But there are certain areas where I want to have predictability and ease in my life so that I can have the capacity to do those kinds of activities in other areas that I actually do care about.
Yeah. You said the word. That's the word I was thinking of was creativity. But when we talk
Mm-hmm.
about having these routines, we have to give ourselves space to have some creativity.
Hmm.
Otherwise, we also miss opportunity and we miss growth because we
Mm-hmm.
become so
Yeah.
stringent. So I think that's probably why the routines are also not like the most loving word I've ever liked, because it feels like it stifles your creativity. Um, when I was in Italy, I had a routine. Like if you think about it in a different way, my routine was wake up in the morning, look at my GPS on my phone, decide what city I want to go to, set my GPS, find a mode of transportation, get to that city, reopen my GPS and look for a hotel, find the hotel, get there, and then I was good. And that was actually like, that still left room for some creativity, however, and to listen to myself, right? And trust myself in the journey. And it also did have some structure to it. And I thought I was like, I'm so unhinged. Like, I don't have any structure. I'm just like, I'm going wherever. But really, now that you say that, like, there is structure. It just doesn't look like what you may see in, productivity workshops or like somebody's, Etsy design of what a schedule is supposed to look like, because it doesn't need to. And if we
Hmm.
don't leave room for our creativity, we don't leave room for those amazing ideas to come, or for us to even just open our eyes and see the world in different ways and expand and have the growth opportunities that we really need as human beings. We have to have those. They're very important. So I love that you're talking about building those in. And I think, for our listeners and even for myself, I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to look at my routines differently. What are the routines that are structured that I actually do love and want to keep? And where do I leave room for creativity on purpose? And I
And
think
also
that's important.
relaxation.
Hmm.
Sorry, I just did that interrupt thing. Everybody can I
No, you're
told
good.
the truth about myself.
No, that was a beautiful transition because you started right when I ended. That's what that was.
Perfectly timed.
We just made
Perfectly
a
timed.
list of activities that we want to do at Christmas when the family is gathered because we don't want to forget about some. We don't have to do all of them, but it'll be a menu of options. And one of the kids reminded me, put down naps, right? Chill.
I
Like
think I think I put down naps.
everyone, every minute doesn't have to be a game or a puzzle or an
Yes.
outing. Like let's make sure that we're protecting space for us to just be
Be.
calm and
Mm-hmm.
relaxed and just be sitting around doing nothing. And a lot of times that is when creativity generates that sense of well-being, allows new connections to be made. So,
Mm-hmm.
There is a feeling of deep satisfaction when you look at your to-do list and one of the items is chill, and you've done that, and you're just like, shink, cross that. Like, I've just been sitting around doing nothing for an hour and a half.
good job, me.
Mission
Right.
accomplished.
Yes, I know.
And so another variation on this, I think, is this can be, I think of it mostly in the context of art or creativity, but I think it can apply to any field of pursuit. And that is giving yourself a block of time to do a certain kind of activity, but not filling in what you're going to do with it.
Mm.
So as a writer, I'll just say, for example, I'm going to write from 10 to 1, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's going to be my writing time. And I just know that 10 o'clock my butt has to be in that seat. I have an appointment with myself. I have to show up. I have to respect myself to be on time. And then after that, what happens for the next 3 hours is really kind of up in the air. I can write in my journal. I can write a letter to a friend. I can, I can work on a book. Whatever it is that I want to tinker around with. And at 1 o'clock, I can punch out. Whether I've had a good day or a good session or a bad session, I know that for good or bad, it's going to end at 1 o'clock. and that might seem like a little bit of a weird example. A lot of people don't have a 3 hour block in the middle of the day, but you might say, well, I'm going to work, if you want to write a book, I'm going to write from 6:30 to 7:15 every day. And your butt is in the seat. And whether you get out 10 words or 1,000 words,
You did it.
you did it. It's a
You did
win
it.
regardless. And so I think that kind of structure is what has helped me generate some of those things that I'm proud of. Most of the stuff that I generate ends up, in the garbage can, and that's also okay. And you just recognize that that's actually not the process is generating stuff, and only 10% of it, 5% of it sees the light of day. That's the part that people read or see, and most of the rest of it is in the garbage or in the delete bin or whatever. And that's okay. That's just how creating something new works.
Mhm.
If 95% of it was perfect, then I'm not trying. I'm just replicating something straight up. I'm not exploring anything new.
Because you're learning the same time you're doing it. I mean, you're learning and developing and extracting while you're like it's a process. That's part of the process. What would you say to people who wanted to do something new? Could be big, could be small, but they're like on the edge of their seat and they're like, I don't know if I should get off my seat and like go take that step forward. Like I just can't get myself to. What would you tell somebody?
I have some thoughts, but
Yeah.
I don't want to just
Go
jump
for it.
in.
Yeah.
Um,
She'll interrupt you if you talk too long.
Yes, I will. No.
no,
Just
she'll
kidding.
she'll slowly
She-
tap my leg where you
she-
won't see it, and that means I know that she has something she wants to say.
I love it.
We've
It's so
developed
good.
it. We've got it all dialed in.
I love the secret
Um,
codes. I will ask you
yes,
about those
exactly.
later. Okay.
So here's what I think it's important to ask yourself. If you're in that situation, if you're on the cusp of doing something, um, if you haven't asked yourself this question already, I think it's worth asking at this point. Who am I doing it for? Am I doing it to please somebody else? Or am I doing it for somebody else's approval? Am I doing it because I want to impress somebody else? Or is it something that's actually sincerely important to you? And I know I think you're gonna call me out on something here,
I'm
maybe,
right. Who
because
knows?
Emily and I, this is a topic that Emily and I are discussing a fair bit, is that
Okay.
there's a difference between um, being nervous and excited and nervous about something that you truly want to do, and being nervous about something that you're doing for somebody else. Whether it's like, hey, I want to, I'm go, I'll just try and think of a concrete example here. Like, I'm excited to go to college because I think I want to study this specific thing and I'm really curious about it and I think it's going to be fun and I want to go to this school for these reasons because these are the professors that I want to work with and they have the best reputation for this area of study. That's a good, nervous, excited, I think. And if you're nervous and you're like, my mom and dad went to this school and they want me to be a fill in the blank profession and I don't know if I can hack it and I so I'm nervous because I don't want to disappoint them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad
Mm-hmm.
kind of anxiousness, I think. And so
The fuel
it's
behind
not
it's
always about
different.
what's yeah,
The
and so I
fuel,
think it's
yeah.
about being sincere and honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And also I'll say that Emily and I are big believers in doing something and then immediately retreating, like doing something new and then going right back to the familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in our framework, we call this navigating out of the harbor. Your harbor is whatever is comfortable to you, your home, your job, whatever it is that is familiar. Even if you don't like it, it's familiar. And then you say, I'm going to jump out and I'm going to venture out and I'm going to do something new, different, scary, and it's going to be a discovery. it's important, go do that thing, but then go right back to where you're comfortable. And this might seem counterintuitive, but what that does is you can be like, how much did I like that? How much do I want to do that again? How much, can that be a part of what I have now, or is that a bigger thing? And then the secret is to then say, now I liked it. I'm going to try going a little bit further, but then I'm going to go back to what's familiar. And we call this expanding concentric circles, because what happens is each time you venture out, you go further towards whatever it is that might be calling to you. And then you're able to, you go back to a place where you feel safe, and you're able to assimilate it and think about it and assess and restore yourself, recharge your battery so that you have energy and courage to go out again. And the nice thing is that each time it feels less and less scary, and you can go further and further. And honestly, I had never really thought about this before. Sometimes you may not need to come all the way back to your original comfort zone, because as you do this, your comfort zone is expanding. And then eventually you're not going to believe how far you can travel into the new space. You're going over the horizon, and the place that used to feel familiar to you, you don't need to lean on it anymore, because you've gotten so comfortable kind of inching your way out that you can, it's easier to let go of whatever wasn't your optimal thing. And you can really enjoy your new thing without having the stress or the worry or the anxiety of abandoning cold turkey, the thing that was your safety net for so long. You look like you might want to add to that. I'm trying to read your body language.
Oh, I have a different answer. The question was, if someone is kind of on the fence, on the edge, they're interested in trying something that's uncomfortable to them, and they're just kind of deciding whether they're going to go for it or stay where they are. Mm-hmm. One of the things we like to recommend is asking yourself what could go right and imagining a positive outcome, because what is really scary is a black hole or a blank page or like an emptiness. And as you can start to fill in that vision of what it would look like, what success would look like to you if you were to choose to take that leap, that gives you some footing. Another thing I like to recommend right away is open a folder for that thing. Just create a folder for it. If it's like, I want to run my own cafe, or I want to write a screenplay, or I want to start a business or a fitness program, or whatever it might be. Just open a folder for that. And then as you start Googling around, or as you see an article, or you hear a comment, or anything that seems it may in any way be related to that effort that you want to engage in, you've made a space for it. And this is where you can collect all of that. And as it starts to accumulate, you'll learn about yourself. Like, what is it about it that's interesting to you? You'll start to see paths forward. You'll probably find mentors. You'll probably learn from other people who have done it or are doing it. If it's something like, I want to do a trip, we hear a lot of, because we're in a travel business, we hear a lot of people talk about trips they want to go on. And we'll always say, well, what city do you want to go to? How much does it cost to get from where you are to there? We met one lady who had been talking for almost 2 decades about wanting to go on a cruise with her husband. And we didn't really know her very well. It wasn't our place. She wasn't asking our opinion.
She wanted to go on an Alaskan cruise.
I know. She knew specifically an Alaskan cruise. And after she left, we were just like, I bet she's never even Googled it. For probably a few $100s, she could do that trip. She could live her dream. And it's just hanging out there as a someday impossible, kind of fantasy. And we like to put some reality to it, put some legs on it. How much would it cost? How far away is it? Which cruise line would you go on? Would you get an inside cabin or an outside cabin? What are the requirements here? And so, what could go right, and make a folder for it. And then something Eric taught me that is really good is, instead of maybe writing on a list that you're going to do that thing, just write that you're going to start doing that thing. That way, any effort that you made towards it is a win. But if you write, this isn't something exciting, but if you write, do my taxes, that's very overwhelming. But if you just write, start doing my taxes, it's like, well, I looked up which form I need. Good
Mm-hmm.
job, me.
Mm-hmm.
You're on your way.
Okay, so what you two, this is what I love. What you two just said, like where they were two totally different answers, they completely built upon each other. Because what I heard Eric say, I want to just point a couple of things out, is when you, I remember you teaching that about like leaving out and what did you say? Expanding, how do you say it?
Expanding concentric
Expanding
circles.
concentric circles. Okay. I remember you teaching that at my conference. Actually, you taught that
Mhm.
to my students, and um, when you start to go further out, the other thing is where you started becomes a lot less interesting, and now where you've gone becomes a lot more exciting and a lot more interesting. And when it comes to life changes, habit changes, breaking patterns. Because that's a lot of what I talk about too, is, breaking generational patterns and cycles. And it feels like a really hard thing to do. But as you move out into the abyss, what you used to do really becomes a lot less interesting. If you used to argue, if you used to respond a certain way, if you used to behave a certain way, if you used to have a bad habit that you needed to get rid of, it's actually not very interesting anymore. Now what's new is more interesting. But then, so I'm that's what I was thinking of when you said that. And then I was like, yeah, and then it gets really scary because you have this whole blank canvas. And by the way, this is my life that I'm describing. I've abandoned, or I'm done with all of the old patterns, and generational cycles and patterns that I've worked so hard to like identify and learn how to get rid of. And now there's this like giant blank canvas that feels a little intimidating. And then it's like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I don't even know where to start now. Like, what do I want on my canvas? And so then Emily jumps right in with, oh, by the way, what could go right? And how do you want to design it? And just open up the tab on your computer and just start designing, right? And it doesn't have to be scary. And it also doesn't have to be concrete. Like you can put stuff in the delete folder that you test out and you don't love. So like working with it, what Eric's saying too, is like, well, you can go out and you can try this. If you didn't like that, go a different direction over here. Like you can try that location, whatever you want, but you do have opportunity and you do have option. And what you both just described allows people to take the opportunity, see the possibility, and work through options that they didn't otherwise think were possible in a very like laid out way. And in that same fashion, what you're also describing is a process that allows your nervous system to start to acclimate to what's new without having a complete like meltdown or reaction or like run back and go safe in the cave, or at the harbor, right? Because it's too scary out there and we can't face what's different. That going out a little bit and coming back also allows our nervous system to get adjusted to like, oh, I just went out a little bit. I didn't die. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to be safe again. And then I'm going to go out again and I'm going to go a little further. And oh, I survived that too. Okay, we can do this, right? And it doesn't have to be from point A all the way to like, Hawaii. Like you don't have to go from the Bahamas to Hawaii. You get to take steps in between, which is amazing. So what a great process you two just put together. You
Oh,
guys are
thank you,
fascinating.
Lisa.
So good. So good. So do you have any final comments as we kind of wrap up for our listeners about your journey to joy that you've had?
What I love about that title, Journey to Joy, is that it's giving a destination. It's saying this is the aim, right? I know what I'm aiming towards. I know what I'm oriented towards. And it's sometimes we talk about the difference between a compass and a map. And a map is kind of laying out, here's exactly how you get there. And a compass is letting you know, am I going the right direction? Because the map sometimes has a way of changing, right? The terrain changes and the map's not working
Yeah.
anymore. But when you are oriented on something like that, then no matter what's happening with your map, you can say like, you know what, this is what I'm after. And I think that's to me, that's really key in probably what sounds super tedious and honestly sometimes feels very tedious. What we talked about at the beginning of like, okay, well, let's analyze our data and let's analyze our relationship interactions, and let's, get into the nitty gritty and see what could be, what we can tinker with or recalibrate so that this whole thing functions more smoothly. But it's to that end, right? To the end that we want to offer these really beautiful experiences for other people. We want them to have an incredible time. We're so honored so many times people come with us. They're in a season of real transformation in their own life, a major shift. Very often, much like yourself where you are now, saying something so big has just changed in my life that I feel like I'm looking at a blank page, and they'll come out and share part of that journey with us. And in our relationship, it's the same thing. Like we care so much about each other that we want to continue becoming better, not just as individuals, but in relationship. And so it's worth it because those hard times and those tricky puzzles that you're trying to figure out are meant to yield a smoother journey. And we can compare and contrast and say, remember when we first got married and we were like this, and now we're doing this other thing? Imagine where we might be 30 years down the road if we keep caring so much about the relationship or the business or the client that we're willing to put in this much effort. And it is satisfying. And like, outside of relationship and outside of business, just for me personally, I have cultivated a lot more credibility with myself as I become more disciplined in my emotions, as I become more attentive and aware of what I'm thinking and where it's coming from and where I actually want to steer to. And I'm sure you've talked about this before, but Viktor Frankl talks about the space between stimulus and response. And as I spend more time in that space, that's where my real agency is. Between something comes up and I decide how I want to respond to it, all of my power is in that space. So the more I can widen out that space, the more power I have to be somebody that I'm happy to be, that I feel good about presenting to my loved ones.
Yeah. And you have all that power. Yeah.
I love that.
No one gets
compass.
to take that space from you.
Yeah.
I
shrink it a lot. I shrink it a lot, but I'm trying to just like crowbar it open.
I think for me, I would say to anyone listening to this, if anything that you're hearing today or that you're learning from Lisa is helpful to you and setting you in a good direction in your life, I would encourage you to be very patient with yourself, because you are an eternal being and you are going to grow at a steady rate. And the fact is that if we choose a direction, and maybe this goes back to the autopilot, if we choose a direction and we move in that direction steadily, no matter how fast or how slow you're going, no matter how big or small your progress is, you will get there. I have sailed vast distances at 2 miles an hour. It is not fun, but as long as you stay steady and you stay on course, and you inevitably get pulled off and you're having to correct and readjust to get back on course. But if you just move in the right direction steadily, you will arrive. So be patient with yourself, trust yourself, and keep going, because you'll get there.
And the whole time you can be curious and courageous and grateful and learning. Like, whether or not you're at the goal or not, those things can always be true for you.
Yeah. And that's why it's a journey, right? We're on our journey to joy, and we get to have so much of it along the way, which is amazing. And thank you so much for sharing all of the sailing analogies. If someone has not had that experience and they would like it, where do they find you to go sailing?
Just go to theawesomefactory.nyc. That's our company, theawesomefactory.nyc, because we were in New York City when we founded it, and all the information's there. And we're also on social media and under that same thing.
Amazing. And we will put links. You also have 2 books. So you wrote the first book together, and Eric, you wrote the second book by yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, Emily is always involved.
We wrote it together, and then I said, it reads better without my part, so we deleted everything that I had
Oh no.
contributed. So it's really all him, and it is much better for it.
So
I
yeah,
love it.
that book just came out this week. It's called Knock: The Spiritual Journey of a Door-to-Door Salesman, and it's about immediately after we got off the boat and kind of got back into life. And Seven at Sea is everything about moving our lives towards living on a boat and that whole experience. So those two kind of they
They're chronological.
yeah. So I don't
Chronological.
want to say
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
your
prequel and
story.
a sequel, but it's like the original and then part two.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right. Well, so we'll put links in the show notes for all of that, and they can find you at Awesome Factory, The Awesome Factory, The Awesome Factory.
TheAwesomeFactory.nyc.
.nyc. Don't forget the. Okay. Thank you guys so much for not taking a pass today because I needed this. I had a down morning as well. So I needed this just as much as you do. And now it's just like brightened my day and my life. And that's what it's all about. That's why it's part of the journey, right? And we just stay consistent with all that stitching that's on the backside and the effort that we're putting in so that when we show up, we look like we're just freaking rock stars because we've done all the effort on the back end. It looks effortless. So
Well, I just want to say I was right. I feel better. I feel so much better now that we've talked. So this was definitely
yes,
a win and a pick me up for me. So thank you so much,
good.
Lisa.
I
Yeah,
love
thanks
it.
for having us.
See?
Always a pleasure.
So good. And also tells everyone too, it really matters who you surround yourself with because we're just friends having a conversation, which is what is fun for us to do as well. And, when you can talk to friends and you can be picked up from wherever you're at, and we don't even have to tell each other where we're at. I didn't have to tell you what was wrong with me, and you didn't have to actually tell me what was wrong with you. But yet, all together, we're able to have a great high level conversation, and we all have lifted each other's spirits. And that, I think, the people that we find along our journey are just as important as the journey, and recognizing who those people are that are in our lives is a huge blessing for all of us. So thank you for being on my journey to joy. You guys have been you've been a fun part of my journey the last 4 years. So thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
All
Love it. Thank you,
right.
Lisa.
All right. We're signing off now. Have a wonderful day.